Hello, Internet. Yeah, well, no, fine. Today is a day. Today, yes, yes. On the other end of this communication that I've got going here, this Zoom chat, I have my psychologist. Yes. Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you briefly. He spoke me through a very bad period in time. We did an operational tour together, and he put up with me, and he filled my glass when it needed filling, and he gave me a shoulder when I needed one, because he had experience. You see, he knew about life that I was only starting to learn. Also, why I wanted to speak to this particular gentleman is because he's a moth. He's not only a moth. I believe he's the now he's going to hit me because I'm going to get this wrong. I always get it wrong. Old bull, big bull of a shell. And this gentleman often tells me about moths and the moth activity, but more or less what he tells me is about the medals on both breasts, on both chests when he's dolled up. And boy, he can doll up nicely. I'll even include a photo or three. That I will. Vandag is 'n lekker dag vir my, want ons gesels met my ou chom, Manie Jansen. Manie, it is such a pleasure to have you here. Really. So I mentioned that you wear the ribbons on both sides or the medals on both sides. Tell us where that tradition started, and then why do you wear on both sides? Because I know the military didn't just start for you when you joined the Air Force. Welcome, Yamani. It is terrific to have you here. Please go ahead. I'm allowing you as much time as you want. I want to hear your story. And then when you finish telling us some bits and pieces, I'm going to remind you about two photos, two photos. And then you must tell us that.
I thought you'd forget about that. I was hoping you'd forget about that. For the medal thing, I'll come back to. I want to talk about my life a little bit just now. But the medal thing is you wear your own medals militarily throughout since the beginning of time when medals were given out. You know, the recipient wears them on his left breast always. Okay. Um, there's a tradition that started after the First World War, where that if your father had passed away, but he had already been awarded medals, then you were allowed to wear them on your right breast. So, and your father could wear your grandfather's if your grandfather had passed away. So, there are only certain occasions where you can actually wear both. For example, on Sunday, I'm driving, well, you know where I live. I live in the winelands of the Western Cape. I'm driving down to Cape Town on Sunday morning, my wife and I, and we are going to Bergfleet. There's a moth shuttle there, and we're having a Border Boys Memorial Campaign parade. So we honor the guys that passed away or died in the bush war, in our South African bush war. But we're doing a little parade there on Sunday. We march just basically around the block, and they have the band playing and the nice little bit of fanfare. And then afterwards, we have a guest speaker, and it's actually very nice. It's just a good get together. It promotes the camaraderie, and it's a good thing. But on that occasion, we normally only wear our own medals. Okay. On Remembrance Day, which is the 11th of the 11th, as you know, we then wear the medals on both days if we have that commemorative parade. On both sides, at least. So.
Thanks, Manie. Me, I'm more a paluka out of the marshes, so I don't know these fancy things. So, okay, that ties in with why have you got two sets of medals? Go ahead and tell us that part of your life story, and then you can just carry on regardless. When you join the SAAF. Now I've got a little secret here, folk. I'm better than Manie. I was in flight 3 and he was in flight 5. So I am superior to Manie. We did our basics together, same parade ground, same everything, but there were many. I think there were 12 flights of 30 odd people. So that's 360 folk. And they had the very first ladies' flight there too. So there were 360 folk and superiors there on that. And I remember the RSM one day. Remember RSM Oberholster?
Very well, very well.
He was on the parade ground and he was hollering at us. And he turned to that flight. They stood in the front on that side, on his left-hand side. And he said, Dames, druk toe julle ore, ek moet nou bietjie die manne uitkak, en he let rip. It was one of those memories that'll stay with me forever. Okay, Manie, I'm going to shut up, and you go ahead.
Well, see, I come from a military background. You know, when we spoke the other day, I said to you, I don't want to speak strictly Air Force. I think a lot of guys have told you about the Air Force and what they've done and what they've achieved and ops they were in and things like that. And I just thought, often I think there's a human side to each person. And often, I know Steve could say hopped on a bit about his family life in South Africa and going to Canada and that type of thing. But most of the guys don't really tell you about their upbringing. And I have, the reason I want to do it is because I come from a military home. My grandfather fought in the First World War, okay, and he survived. And then he came back and he worked at the Mint in Pretoria. And then, long story short, he passed away in the early 1930s, okay, 1931 or 32. My grandmother remarried a guy after the First World War, after the Second World War at least, and they had one kid, and then he passed away as well because of wounds sustained in the Second World War. So she had two war veterans that she was married to, okay. You know, my dad was in 1944, he turned 16, and he wanted to join the army, and they said, you can't go up north, you're too young. So he joined the Youth Training Brigade, which was then based at Roberts Heights, which later on become Voortrekker Hoogte, and is now called Tabatswane in Pretoria or whatever, okay. And then when he turned 18, he wanted to go fight the war, 26th of August, and the war had just ended. So he was a bit peeved, but all he knew was military, so he decided to join the Royal Marines, and he went overseas to England and did courses in Portsmouth and places like that on cannons, became an instructor, and ended up back on Robben Island, and then met my mom through her brother, who became my uncle, obviously. My dad and the guy called Frank Bontes. My dad was also Manie, it's a family name. Frank Bontes was his buddy, and introduced him to his younger sister, and they ended up falling in love. Yeah, and I'm the end product. So yeah, we lived on Robben Island for the first 4 to 5 years of my life. It was absolutely amazing place to live, surrounded by cannons and soldiers, and it was way before the prison then was just a normal prison. It wasn't a political prison at the time. And if you excuse me, it was before Nelson Mandela had his time shooting, so we were just living there. Anyway, so yeah, it was a lovely place to live, and the kids all knew each other. We swim in the sea. Our house was such an amazing house. We used to walk out of our back door, across a little bit of grass, over the sand on the beach, and go climb in the water between the rocks. And I'd hold the bag, and my dad would basically lean over and take out crayfish and paddle them in. And we'd have a bite the next evening or whatever. Okay. But anyway, yeah, so we lived there until 1960. I was born in 56. And then 1960, early 61, the writing was on the wall, and South Africa was going to become a republic. And they disbanded the Royal Marines in South Africa. And then the guys in the Royal Marines had an option to go either to the Navy, to the crash boats of Langebaan, or, well, it would have been Air Force, so the crash boats in Langebaan, or go to the SA Navy in Simonstown at the time. So my dad opted for the Navy. He loved the sea. And he ended up being a coxswain in the minesweepers, and later on he progressed to bigger ships. And he retired. He took an early pension in 1984. 82, 83, he took an early pension. He was in the Master Arms at SAS Chalcina, which is in Durban, which is like a RSM in the Air Force. Anyway, and yeah, he was my mentor growing up. We moved to Simonstown from Robben Island, and I started going to school in Simonstown, ended up going to Fisher Primary. And then I went to boarding school for 3 years, and my folks got divorced in that time. And my dad said, come back home. So I went back and I went to Fisher High School. But my dad and I subsequently became great mates because he was now single. And he taught me to fish, taught me to drink beer, taught me to play pool and play darts, and just basically I matured a lot in those 3 years 3 to 4 years that we were together without my mom being there. She was in the background. I'm not knocking her. She's passed away. Rest in peace. But my dad and I, we bonded. We became mates. We used to go to Namibia every year in June, go hunting on his cousin's farm in Grootfontein, learned how to shoot and learned how to slaughter buck and animals and make biltong and all kinds of things. And it was for me, honestly, a great way to live. And also, the area we lived in was the Gama Park, which is a naval village on top of the mountain between Glencairn and Simonstown. And the weekends were, we didn't go into town often. We either go to Glencairn Beach, which was a fantastic beach. It was actually a hidden gem, really. And it wasn't very popular, but people used to drive past because wind used to blow, and it suited us perfectly because it's a lovely beach. And then in the mountains behind the Garden Park, it was absolutely great. We used to go hunting dussies and climb rocks and climb mountains and find caves and do all kinds of things that I think kids should do. Climb trees. There were sports facilities. We played tennis. We played football. It was just a beautiful place to grow up. Yeah, and then okay, my dad was in the Navy. I had an uncle, my mom's brother, in the Army. Um, I had an uncle in the police service as well. And my grandfather and my step grandfather were both ex-army as well. So it was sort of destined for me to go to the military. I just decided that I wasn't going to the Navy. My dad was in the Navy. I think a lot of ex would have gotten even with my dad through me in the Navy because he was very much a disciplinarian. But as hard as he was very fair. I met guys after he passed away and said, your dad was one of the hardest buggers we ever met, but also one of the fairest guys we ever met. So I thought, not the Navy. Army didn't appeal to me. But I must go back a little bit. In 1970, I flew up from Cape Town Airport. Those days, yes, well, what is it called? DF Milan to OR Tambo, which was then Jan Swart. And I spent a week or two with my uncle on holiday, my godfather, in fact, and then we drove back with a car. And I flew for the first time in my life on a Boeing 707. The first I've ever flown, which was an incredible feeling. And I fell in love with it. I was hooked. I thought, this is what I want to do one day. I want to fly. But lo and behold, my maths was never good enough. So I decided I'm going to go join the Air Force and I want to become a flight engineer. Always loved aeroplanes, loved mechanical things, filling of lawnmowers. And I bought my first motorbike behind my dad's back from a Navy guy who was clearing out of his national service. Needed an engine overhaul. I paid 50 Rand for the bike and I paid 49 Rand to engine overhaul. Can you believe it? And I used to hide it away at a friend's place down the road. And one day, about a year after I had it, I never had a license. I had no license, needed the bike. I was driving in Soundstown, and those of you who know Soundstown, there's a single road going into town and the same road out. You don't drive unless you're going down to Cape Point. You stay in Soundstown. And I stopped at the station because the traffic light was red for pedestrians, so they could cross, or red for me, so they could cross. And I looked in the mirror on the bike, and there was my father's El Camino bakkie. It was distinctly painted in the Gunston colors in those days, and I could see, I thought, this is where the poor boy hits the fan. I just kept on looking straight ahead of me. I concentrated, and I just said, Manie, pull over, I want to have a chat to you. Oh boy, here we go. He called Moose a box lock. So I pulled over across the other side of the station, and he pulled over and said to me, and where does this come from? And I said, no, I bought it from Derek Hand, who cleared out and this and that. And he said, you bugger, how long have you had it? I said, about a year, maybe 18 months. And he said, okay, go and do what you want to do, but I'll see you at home later. So, okay, fine. Very relaxed. I thought, well, I got over. He said, give me the keys. You're not riding a bike. Until the day you can buy your own bike that I approve of, because I don't want you riding a bike anyway, but when I approve of the bike, you can buy a bike. And he rode it to work and back, and he loved it. My dad, as a young man, used to race at Roy Escott in Durban. He had a matchless spring frame motorcycle, which I haven't seen for years. I think there's maybe one or two in South Africa. I don't think so, but maybe. It was a racing bike they imported for a guy, but then the guy broke his leg, so my dad bought it from them, and he used to ride it. And he enjoyed it very much. But when he got married, he decided to, when he moved to Robben Island and got married, he decided to sell it. So, yeah, but he wouldn't let me get a motorbike. I was actually a bit pissed off with him, to be honest with you, but because I still love motorbikes, I still have one, in fact. Anyway, so then I joined the Air Force, and let me get back a little bit. Sorry, I'm jumping around a bit. I failed standard 9 the first time because I came from a boys-only boarding school, and suddenly I was surrounded by girls and the beach and all these nice things, and bottle stores, being naughty bugger, and smoked all kinds of funny things for a little while as well until I got over that yearning in my life or that stupid habit. Anyway, I fell standard 9 outright. So I loved it so much, I did it again. And then I managed to scrape through the second time. And then matric, I failed maths, but I passed on aggregate. And I wasn't happy with the fact that I failed maths. So I applied to write subs. In those days, you could write subs. In the end of 75, you could write subs. which I wrote in the March, and I rewrote biology as well to bring up my average. So I knew that I'd done stupidly bad in biology, which I passed, but I knew being my favorite subject, I should have done better. So managed to pull the average up and managed to scrape matric maths the second time around. So I'd been deferred for that year of 1976. And then I got called up. The first one call up I got was in 75, was to 16 maintenance unit. No, I lie. It was number 1 signals regiment in Heidelberg. And the second time in 76 was 16 maintenance unit in Grootfontein. So I thought, I'm not going to go and pump diesel and drive trucks for 2 years and learn nothing afterwards and come out of it with the national service pay and have to look to find a job. And I thought, let me join the Air Force. That's what I always wanted to do. Loved airplanes, loved working, built model airplanes all my life, loved them. Yeah, and then I went to Pretoria and I got sworn in on this 4th of October 1976. And so it was in between basics, as you know. So I ended up with building the same obstacle course that we were chased to. We did basics. So did that little job for about a month, and they called us transfer flight. They transferred us. I went to the RSM and I said, "Listen, I'm not being nasty. I was obviously." I found out later he actually knew my dad, but I spoke to him and I said to him, "I'm from Cape Town and I'm sitting here. I have one uncle here that he's tired of visiting the same way every weekend because I don't have any people. Can I get transferred back to Cape Town until basic starts and then I'll come back up again?" He said, "Leave it with me." 2 days later, he called me and said, "Okay, there's your signal. You're going to Cape Town." So I worked at 2 aircraft servicing units at Easterplot doing Albatross servicing as a wannabe appy. I mean, I hadn't done basics yet, I hadn't done workshops or either things. I knew I could use a tool, whatever. And the very first aircraft I ever worked on was Albatross. That they just finished the very first major servicing on an Albatross in South Africa. For those of people that don't know Albatross, it's a Piaggio P166S. It's a civilian aircraft, push-pull, prop space back to an engine, and modified a bit for military and sprayed in. There were military, maritime, short, or in-range with inshore patrol aircraft. They were sprayed white on the roof and blue on the sides with a red stripe, but the wings were grey as well. So I was working on this aircraft that I promise you, foresee, it was probably about the third or the fourth last screw that we were putting in on the tailplane, and I broke the anchor nut off. And there was this deathly silence in the hangar. It was like a Thursday afternoon, I think. And everyone just looked at me, and I got off the stand. I said, "Sorry, oops." And Sergeant Major kept storming out of his office. I think he just heard the hangar go quiet. He kept storming out of the office to see we still have people working there. He asked, "What's going on here?" And his name was Sergeant Major Berry. He had a very squeaky voice, a high-pitched squeaky voice, which I'm not even going to try to imitate because it might break the microphone or your speakers. And he said to me, "What's going on?" I said, "I made a mistake. I broke something." And he said, "Why are you working on airplane?" I said, "You told me to work with these guys. I must learn." Sergeant Major forwards and backwards. And yes, Sergeant Major. No, Sergeant Major. Feedback, full Sergeant Major. Well, I ended up getting 5 EDs, 5 extra duties. I'd never stood beat in my life, but suddenly I had to do 5 of them. And the guys had to take the whole tailplane off to replace the anchor bolts, the anchor nut. I wasn't the most popular guy in the hangar, but they got it done by the next afternoon, and we had assembled. I was allowed to watch. I wasn't allowed to touch anything after that for the next week. And it was actually quite funny that that same airplane went out on the Monday for its first a long test flight, and they flew about 2 hours. The pilot was a guy called Lieutenant van Jaarsveld. And that's actually very important because some people might know him. And they came back and they landed at Easterplot lunchtime, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, whatever. And we were all sitting, the guys didn't go for lunch. We were sitting in expectancy because everyone had worked on this airplane. The first time ever that the Albatross had been serviced and maintained, or overall, basically overall, that in South Africa, any place outside of Italy. And they came back and they taxied in, parked in front of the hangar, and they got out and they said, "Thumbs up." And the guys were chuffed. I think if it was champagne, we would have got slaughtered that afternoon. Anyway, so we, as you know, filled in the traveling copy, gave it to the pilots. The result of the test flights was filed and everything. And he had to ferry the aircraft across from Easterplot to DF Milan in those days where 27 Squadron was stationed. And he took off from Easterplot and he flew across to DF Milan. And when he came into land, luckily, the tar runway was in use with SAA and the various airlines at that stage. And they diverted him to the grass runway. Okay, and the wind was blowing southeast. So basically, he took off from Oysterplaat, he turned left, turned right in line with the grass runway, and then he started using height to go and land at Deerfalun. And when they were coming in, a warning buzzer was going on, beep, 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 beep. And he thought, there's a problem with the buzzer. It must be the stall warning. So he gave a little bit of pitches, gave a bit of more power, changed the pitch a little bit, and this thing beep, 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 beep. Anyway, they thought I was going to ignore it now. I think they pulled the circuit breaker to stop it from beeping. And they landed. And when he wanted to taxi, the aircraft wouldn't move. They forgot to put the wheels out. That's what the buzzer was all about. So his nickname became Wheels Up on Jaarsveld. Anyway, so yeah, the guys jacked the aircraft up, they pumped the anchors out manually, and the next morning they flew it back to a spot with the wheels out all the way and landed it. And we took the belly panels off. I was allowed to help take the belly panels off, and it was just a little bit of scratches. Nothing was injured. So I resprayed the panels and put them back on. And then he had to come fetch it 3 days later and fly it back. But they made him fly with his wheels out all the way back, so he wouldn't forget again. I don't think he ever forgot to put the undercage down after that. It's actually a very, very funny story. But anyway, yeah, and I think a guy called Gavin Fisher, you might have known Gavin Fisher was working for Atlas in those days. He was Gavin would appreciate that. Yeah, and then okay, so they let me know, let's go back to Pretoria to do basics. And went up there. I think we started on the 15th or 16th of January. You know, I can't remember exactly. And yeah, I got put into Flight 5. Flight 5 had all the guys who had joined up in the meantime that were waiting to do basics. So we all ended up in Flight 5, plus a couple of new guys as well, obviously. So we were fortunate that we knew how to march, we knew how to salute. So we had a bit of a head start on guys like you that had come straight from schooling to airport. So we had a bit of a head start. And I must be honest, I enjoyed basics. We had a fantastic instructor, Toy. I know you had Sergeant. Anyway, so then, yeah, in the basics. Now I remember I'd failed the year at school and I wasted another year doing rewriting matric. So I turned 21 on the day we finished basics, which was the 29th of April. And then I obviously got posted to Petersburg to go and do school block. Sorry. Got posted to Petersburg to go and do a school block. And yeah, I enjoyed school block. I did well. I had to start in one because I had an academic matric. I don't know why I had to start in one. Maybe because of maths mark was so slack. But I did pretty well. I actually got a distinction for maths, believe it or not. And then came back to Pretoria. We did workshops. And then TT, and in the beginning of TT, they said to us, if you want to go back or you want to go to the base where you want to be, or the squadron you want to be, you have to pull your finger out, you have to work. So yeah, I'd never learned how to study at school. I learned to study on TT by repetitive reading. That's how I managed to study, and that's anyway I know how to study. And I did very well. And myself and a guy called Billy Blitz, we both got our first choice, which was 22 Squadron and Oysterplaat, Wasps. I wanted to go in helicopters. A guy called Lincoln Smith went to Shackletons, and 2 other guys, Shorty LaRue and Steve Small, went to Albatross. There were only 5 posts in Cape Town. The rest went to Langebaan, I think, including yourself. Anyway, yeah, so I liked 22 Squadron. It was great. The day we got there, it was. Well, we joined in January. Well, basically, basics was January 77. By the time we got to squadron, it was February, March 78 already. You spent about 14 months before you came near an aeroplane. And
yeah, that was so. And just by the by, while interrupting you there, to Langebaan, that was the first time in my life that I got the opportunity to fly in a Flossie going down there. So, yeah, I was in the Air Force for 14 and a half months before they threw me in the back of a Flossie and said, okay, bugger off now.
Yeah, it's amazing. And yeah, I say we in the Air Force 14 and a half months. Well, I was lucky. I touched the airplane. You guys hadn't. And I got to Wasps. And the first day I got in there, they said to me, okay, this guy's your mentor, Sergeant Pete Swanepoel. Pete Swanepoel been in and out of the Air Force. I think it was his 3rd time back in the Air Force. But he was a wealth of information. He loved the Wasp. He was fortunate enough to have been a flight engineer on the PV-1 Venturas. So he was quite old. He was much older than anyone else, but he was a lovely man. Anyway, and he was my journeyman. And he taught me how to do lockings and to do everything. And he was a very good instructor. He was a good trainer. He had all the time in the world. He took me under his wing. You know, in the evenings when I'm battling, he said, studying tasks and doing things. He said, "Kom na my huis toe." And I'd go to his house and he'd light the fire and I'd have a beer with him, whatever, and he explained to me how this thing worked properly. So I had an inside track, but he was just a really, that type of guy. He wanted to help people. He was a fantastic man. And he had a big influence on my life as a epi. And yeah, I just had a great time under him, Pete. And I think of these guys like, we might actually see this one, a guy called Ollie Fried. He was a flight engineer. Ollie was a little short guy, but good guy. Enjoyed him. He's also had a lot of time to talk to the appies and a bit windgat because he was a flight engineer. We thought he was windgat, but he'd achieved something and we were all striving towards that as well. And it was, we looked up to him. And then Pete was also a flight engineer. So I did a lot of sea trips with him, Pete. And I was lucky I did a South Pole trip with him, Pete, because he, wherever he went, he took me along. It was fantastic. Good training, and I was like his son, like his right hand actually, and it was really great. I think I had a very blessed apprenticeship under him. But there was a guy there, like a guy called Hugo Rother. You might remember his brother from Langebaan, Banner. Hugo was a sergeant at that stage. He played the banjo very, very well. And he was a nice guy, but he had this thing about appies. And so now I'm like at the squadron for about a month, and I decided I want to grow a moustache. So I just stopped shaving my top lip, okay? Because no one has in the Air Force, you want to grow a moustache. You wanted a beard, you had a problem. So I had a bit of bump fluff on my top lip, yeah? In fact, it looked like someone just put a smear of nugget on my top lip. It didn't look like it. You know, I was still shaving maybe twice a week at that stage of the game. And I walked into anyone after about a month of trying to grow this bump fluff on my top lip. And he said to me, "What's that on your lip?" I said, "I'm trying to grow a moustache." I said, "Okay." And he said, "You know what helps with that?" I said, "No." He said, "You put honey on your lip, on the top, on the outside, and get some chicken manure and put it behind your lip on the inside." And I was stupid. I said, "How's that going to help, Sarge?" He said, "Well, the honey pulls and the chicken manure is going to push, and then you might get bloody on your top lip eventually." But every time, and I was a naughty appy, I'll be honest, I was, and every time I tried to do something, if I screwed up or did something that he didn't like, he'd come walking up to me and he'd grab me by the moustache. And now he was a bit taller than I was. He grabbed my moustache like this and pulled my lip up and say, "Dance Bicky song." And we go dancing down the hanger. And he said, "Now, what did you do wrong?" And I think, because I can't talk. I'm in pain in my lips up here by my top of my cheek. And then he said, "You did that and that and that." And I said to him, and he put me down and said, "Now answer." I said, "Yes, Sarge, you're right. I did do it wrong. I'm sorry." And I was like, "Now let me take you there and show you how to do it properly." And he would do that. The third time he did that, I made no more mistakes. I just got cut all over my lips stretched right over my head. But anyway, yeah, I had a good apprenticeship. Did into as well, in 3. I got another block. I was very fortunate. I did well at entry, so I got another block. I think Major Darby Strauss was the technical officer at that stage. He called me one day and said, you want to do the block?" I said, "Yeah, please." So I went and did N4, which was quite lekker, quite nice. And because I did another block, my quality date was kept the same, but I qualified a bit later. So I got qualified right at the end of 79 or beginning of 80. Okay, and qualified at WASPs. And then we were getting LOs at the squadron in that year because the WASPs were going to be phased out. We were battling to get spares. We started robbing aircraft to keep them in the air and that type of thing. Lekker, beautiful chopper to work on the WASP. A lot of guys said it was complicated. They call it the flying tea trolley. It was only grey helicopters the Air Force had because it was maritime. We did a lot of sea trips and it was fun. We did sea trips up the West Coast, up the East Coast, up Durban, East London, PE, up this side to Walfish Bay. Mainly on the frigates because the WASP went on the frigates at that stage of the game. Then when the first LOs arrived, I was actually writing my statement to go on flight engineer's course, to apply for engineer's course, when my sergeant major walked into the tea room and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm applying for engineer's course." He said, "Don't go yet." I said, "Why not?" He said, "We're getting LOs. Get yourself current on the LO before you actually go." Now, for those people who don't know, in the Air Force, you only do your trade test once. Now you're qualified. When you start working on another aircraft, you do competencies. So you learn how to do refueling, towing, marshalling, and the first and second line servicing. Until you can sign your own workout, and then you are considered competent. And you write exams, obviously, and give practical tests. So I was declared competent on the LO, and then I went on engineer's course, which helped me a hell of a lot because when we got to Pretoria, when you get to Pretoria, you start the course just doing theory, and then for three and a half months, and then you go and do survival for 2 weeks, and then you get posted to Bloemfontein where you start the practical side. Anyway, yeah, so where were we? As you know, we did engineers course. We were course 1 of 81, and we had a great time. And we were 12 guys who started the course. And then after the theory side, we did engine snags, airframe snags, theory of flight, helicopter, theory of flight, and aerofoils and all these things, and propellers and all that. Then we had the 2 weeks off to go do survival course. We first did land survival, then we did sea survival, and then we were given a week's leave, and we had to report to Bloemfontein. I'm not sure I get the dates right exactly, or the times of the sequence, but we had a week off at some stage. We had to report to Bloemfontein on a certain date. I think it was in March, April, March, I'm not sure, on April, May. Anyway, and when we got to Bloem, one of the guys that dropped out, he got a job at Fuels Aviation. I think qualified on decks in the Air Force. I can't remember his name. I think it was an Italian guy. And he went to Fuels Aviation, so we were down to 11. And when we got there, you'll know Kali Barnhorst, Andre Barnhorst. Kali had been on the previous course, and they did a snag, and he got sent back to his unit. And his sergeant major fought for him, which was a great thing because it proved that Kali was innocent, and he got posted back onto our course to actually come and finish the course. So we became the Dirty Dozen. We were 12 guys eventually. We became the Dirty Dozen again. It was an interesting fact when we went for the engineers course selection. They asked you all kinds of questions, and they asked questions like, "What happens if you had to hang a bomb on an aircraft and it dropped it into an innocent village somewhere?" and that type of thing. And you had to just actually harden and you said, "Listen, I'm not an armorer. Number one, I don't hang bombs, and number two, innocent people get killed in wars, no matter where it happens. And I'm not the guy flying the aircraft or pressing the button, so I'm not dropping the bomb. I'm just doing my job. But I wouldn't do that anyway because I'm not an armorer." So yeah, that was the only question I was asked. So yeah, so I got selected. We were I think we were 18 or 20 guys who were actually selected, but the course was too big, so they made us 12. And on the next course was, you remember Dries van Koller, Blaster Knoll, Andy Delaney, my mate in what's his name? Anyway, doesn't matter. Age catching up with me for, so I can't remember all the names anymore. But they were the course behind us. And we got our wing on the 3rd of December 1981. And then my first booster was January, February 82. Got into the tail end of Op Super, where Steve and Neil Ellis got the HC. Be honest with you, I'm not so exposed anybody, but I thought that Angela Morant and Eugene should have got an HC there as well. They did really good work. And yeah, so, and then obviously did small ops here and there, but the nice thing about being on the LS then was when we came back from the bush, we did sea trips on the Protea. The Protea is the only white ship in the Navy because she carries no armament. I think there were a couple of machine guns, but they detachable just for protecting the ship, not for attacking anybody like a normal naval ship. And those trips were brilliant. To go back to my upbringing in Simonstown, in those days, it was before apartheid, there were a lot of young colored people in Simonstown, and we played in the streets with them, and we played cricket with them, and we went. Now, they had the best beach in Simonstown. We went to Simonstown Beach, we swam with them because it was brilliant. We were about 4 or 5 white kids, white lighties that used to jaw together and run around together and cause untold guano where we went, but we had a good time. One day we just sort of woke up and these people were packing up their stuff and they were moving out. Where are you going? No, we're going to Ocean View, or Slankop in those days, and that became Ocean View in Komiki. And that was my first experience with apartheid, was that all my colored mates were being moved. Yeah, for a while I still used to go over the mountain on the bicycle with myself and Sam and James Bauer, take the bicycle over the mountains and visit them. It became a step as I got older, but now I come back to the present that I'm talking about with the Navy. So when we look at the Protea, now I don't know if you know this, but the Protea at one stage had, except for the commanding officer and the XO and one or two other officers, the rest of the crew all color chaps. That was the way how they started the color, integrating the color chaps into the South African Navy was via the SAS Protea. You know, and it worked brilliantly. And there I get onto the ship, and there's all these folks that I grew up with in the streets. They all joined the Navy as well, and we had great fun. It was I enjoyed the project trips a lot, and I flew with a lot of fantastic guys in the Air Force, and I was very fortunate to get posted back to 22 Squadron, as I said, after engineer's course. So I qualified on the LO obviously first, and then in the WASP as an engineer. The other day I was corrected, so I'm going to say this again for the sake of my friend Mark Reed, who lives in the Transkei now. Mark was the last flight engineer to qualify on the WASP, okay, and I was the second last one. I think I picked Mark because I did a good couple of sea trips as a qualified WASP engineer, and one of the trips we did, myself and a guy called Javi Fento, you might remember. Bobby sang for the Welsh men's choir, a fantastic singing voice. He was a captain at that stage, one of the pilots of 22 Squadron. We had to go out with I think it was the President Pretorius or the President Stein. The Kruger had sank at that stage already. The Kruger sank in 1982 on the 18th of February. And the reason I remember that, I lost two very good friends on the ship, Roy McMaster and Roy Skeets, but I don't want to harp on that. But we were on the President Pretorius with Stein. And there was a submarine out there as well. And they got this old INJ trawler that now I want to sink. Hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. The weather is, the worst weather you get is like sea state 5. You don't really take off. I think we were like sea state 3 or sea state 4. It was like 4 to 5 meter swells. And they've got this trawler that's bobbing up and down like a cork. They've towed it out there. Okay, they've dropped a long old piece of block with a cable on it. I don't know how deep it was. One like a reef. So I don't think it was that shallow. We couldn't see Cape Point anymore. That's how far it was. Okay, well, the visibility wasn't good anyway. So they in the engine room, they'd taken a brand new Honda generator and they welded a hammer to the flywheel. So these guys, we had to take them with a wasp, put them on the foredeck amongst all the rigging and the aerials that are still there, and this thing's doing this in the wind and doing this as well on the waves. We had to put these guys on the foredecks to go down there and they could start the generator, and Bakelit's making a noise because the submarine had to be able to pick it up on its ASDIC or sonar. So that actually didn't go too badly. Took off with them in the chopper, the back door off. We had deflectors on. We don't fly with doors on over the sea on the front. It's just normal deflectors. Flew across, and the nice thing about the WASP is the hoist is on the pilot's side. The LO is on the other side. So Javi could actually see what I'm doing by putting his head up at the door. So it was actually quite well. And I put these guys down, put their bums whipped on the aerials a couple of times, but I put them on the deck. And then the next guy, and then they went down the hatch into the ship. And we had to wait for the submarine to let the ship know that they're picking up the signal, and the ship would let us know via radio. It took about 15 minutes of flying around. I think my imagination was running right. I could almost hear that flipping thing going bang, bang, bang in the ship, and the submarine still couldn't flip and hear it. Eventually, the submarine said they could hear it. And they said, okay, Bakkat. So we got these guys up, and now we hoisted them up. And now we're getting a bit low on fuel, so we said, we have to move it now. And I mean, the wind was pumping. I promise you, I think the wind's blowing 60, 70 k's an hour. And the WASP wasn't the strongest helicopter. She was a little bit underpowered, and she was a bit thirsty as well. We got the guys off, and we put them on the ship, and we landed. And we thought, like, we just lashed the chopper down, and we folded the blades so they wouldn't flap. And we were going to put it back in the hangar as soon as the ship would turn to wind again. And then the submarine said they're going to try and fire a torpedo. So we said, okay. Everyone's waiting. We're all up on the deck in our Wellington boots and raincoats and slickers. And they fire a torpedo. And as the torpedo is just about to hit this INJ trawler, the wave picks it up and the torpedo went through underneath it. And the ship came down again. And the torpedo, I don't know if it sank or whatever, but it was just a waste. So they said, no, they're not going to try that again. It's not going to work. Would the ship please sink it? Now, the frigates have got a 4.5 cannon on the front, on the foredeck, a massive cannon. They just turned the ship a little bit, 2 rounds, and there was the ship gone. They hit it. The first shot hit it above the waterline. The second one just below the waterline. The ship actually broke in half and it sank right there where they wanted it. And I think to this day, the submarine guys are still looking for the torpedo which went astray. It's such a waste of money, anyway. But it was good fun, and Harvey Fenton and I still laugh about that. I flew with guys like Dick Paxton. He passed away last year sometime. Cancer, I believe. Fantastic man. And I had the good fortune the other day to reacquaint myself with a friend who lives. I'm in Robertson. He's in McGregor. A guy called Graham Locke. He was a captain of 22. He's got an excellent guy. And I want to talk about the pilots of the squad, and before we talk about the engineers. And I said, I don't want to talk too much about my experience in the Air Force, but my experience of the Air Force and times with fantastic people. And I think I said to you once before that I'm not a hero, but I flew with a couple of heroes, and I worked with a couple of heroes, and I really did. You'll remember Danny Land, who passed away. Danny was a fantastic guy. I loved him to pieces. And then there was a guy called Simon Tickle, ex-Rhodesian guy. I think he got his wings up there. He came to South Africa, immigrated, and flew for the Air Force here. He had the best eyes that I could wish for on a pilot, because I'd be battling to see the gooks or the swapper, and he'd say, there he is. He had fantastic eyes. He could spot the guy. He made looking for them a pleasure, because he could see them way before I did. And through guys like Steve Gallinetti, who I believe passed away in a aerobatic accident a couple of years ago, quite a while ago, also a very nice guy. And you opt on those photos of mine, and in the first one of the Alouette, the pilot's name is a guy called Andy Freeman. He was a captain at that stage. I think he went to Pumas after that. He'd been to Pumas, then went back to Pumas. But Andy and I are still good mates. He's an excellent guy. He rides a motorcycle as well. We have a lot in common. And we were ferrying from Ondangwa to Inana, I think, or Congo, that direction. And we had a lot of lemons. Lemon is like when they call you out and nothing happens, and you go back and you just wasted chopper fuel and your time, and wasted drinking time as well. But we had a couple of lemons, and Andy and I were ferrying. I think Danny was in the other chopper, in fact, and he took the photo, and he gave it to me on the next bush tour, and that became a mama's famous bushwalk photo. And then I did that with a Wasp a couple of years later. The pilot was a guy called Alan Reynolds, and we flashed the SAS Protea Brown Eye, and unbeknown to me, my friend who'd been at school with me was the EXO, which is like the Edge in the Air Force. He was the executive officer, and he had a camera with a big big lens, and he took another photo of me doing my famous act out of the Wasp. And on the next trip, when I got into the ship, the captain pulled me into his cabin, and the lights were completely off, and there was just a spotlight on my bum, on the wall. And he said to me, "Who the hell gives you permission to give my ship a brown eye?" And I'm not often stuck for words, but that day I was. And I said, so they're blowing bubbles. I said, "Captain, it was just a joke." And then he burst out laughing. He said, "No, it's okay, it's fierce, it's okay." And he gave me the photo, which I still got, which is great. But I flew with fantastic guys, and I want to get to the commanding officers that I worked with. And at one stage, when I got to the squadron, in 1978, was a guy called Neil Malone. He was a major. He was a stand-in OC for a couple of months. I think actually OC was on a course. He came back with US Kluter, who'd been one of the first pilots ever to go to the bush. US Kluter, very nice guy, quiet man, but he commanded respect. Okay, he wasn't a people's person, but he commanded respect by his attitude and the way he spoke to you. He was a humble man, nice guy, and very knowledgeable. And he just gave you the idea that he knew a lot more than he was telling you all the time. He was a clever man, I think. Yeah, and as time went by, we had other OCs, but we had guys like Monster Wilkins. What a man. I mean, Monster passed away 2015, liver cancer, but what a man. He was our OC, and then he became military attaché, and then he came back OC Durban and became a general at hindquarters or headquarters. And but Monster was that type of boss that you couldn't help but love the man. And another guy was Brian Kruger. Now, Brian Kruger was a bit more low-key than Monster, but they had the same modus operandi. Every single day, they would come and walk through the hangar and talk to the guys. And they were aware of the problems, and they relied on the sergeant major to do the discipline. They didn't have to do it. And I know my sergeant major, they say, was a guy called Chris Truter. he walked, his feet were like that. He walked with funny feet like a duck. So his nickname was Duckfoot. You know what the Air Force is like. But he'd call Duckfoot up to his office in the morning and say, "What's happening in my hangar? What's happening in my squadron on your side?" And he'd tell him this and this and this. This guy's going through a divorce, or this guy's mother passed away last week. The funeral was on the weekend, but it's taking a bit of strain. Or this guy's wife about to pop any moment now, expecting a little girl. That type of thing, because he was obviously in the tea room with us. And then Monster would go and walk through the hangar, and he had a fantastic memory. And he would come and speak to each individual guy for just an hour, no, half an hour, 3/4 hour. A lot of guys want trips, a lot of guys want courses, but he'd come and he'd talk to the guys, and the guys loved him. The guys would have killed him. They would have killed for him. He was just a fantastic man. And he phoned me one day. I was sitting in myself and a guy called Eddie Streffer. Eddie was a sergeant major, and I was a flight sergeant at that stage. In the flight office, we were doing the books, the DD 700, 701, 702. We had to put out the flying programs every day to make sure that the aircraft servicings were staggered, so not all the aircraft go into a servicing at the same time, because then you're sitting with 7 or 8 aircraft unserviceable, only 2 or 3 serviceable, and the pilots can't fly, and they've got to fly certain hours for certain aspects of their training, like what do you call it, confined landings, hoisting, cargo swinging, oversea flying, and night flying, mountain flying, all those things. And we had a very good reputation for serviceability. And I got a phone call out of the blue one day in the flight office. I answered the phone and I said, "Flight Jansen, hello." And I said, "There you go," saying, "Manie, is that you?" I said, "Yes, who am I speaking to?" He said, "It's Monster here. I mean, this is my boss, the commandant." I said, "Hello, commandant, how are you?" He said, "I'm lekker, my boot. I'm in Ondangwa. But you know what?" He said, "Friday's my wife's birthday." And I forgot about it. And I just remembered now. I said, "Please, go up to Captain Graham Locke and go borrow money out of the pilot's kitty," because they had a kitty, same as we had. He said, "And please just take you to the spur and borrow a bunch of flowers for me on Friday evening." And you know, my boss asked me to take his wife out for supper, and I was just like a junior flight sergeant. I don't know why. And I was actually divorced at the time as well. So I just thought, "Oh, this guy trusts me." I mean, you can't break that kind of trust, even if you wanted to. And Val is a lovely looking lady, but you don't want to break that trust. He's just a fantastic man. And I took her out for supper and gave her a peck on the cheek and gave her roses, and he never forgot that. Whenever I saw him years later, he was flying for Starlight Aviation. I bumped into him, and he said, "So did you enjoy your date with my wife?" That's the type of guy he was. He was a fantastic guy. He was really a fantastic man, a nice person. Brian Kruger, as I said, also a lovely guy. After I left the squadron, guys like Shatron was the OC, also a very good OC. And then on the flight engineer side, I probably maybe left out a couple of names of a couple of nice guys at the pilot side, but we had good sergeant majors, Chris Tutor and Gus Hecker, who later on became the sergeant major of 22 Squadron when they got the Oryxes, and then later on the other aircraft, what they call those things, the new replacement for the Wasp. I can't remember the name now. The Lynx. Yeah, that's the Lynx. But we had good engineers. We had Burkie Becker. I never even knew Burkie at a HC. Till one day we had a parade, and a memorial parade, and I was in service at that stage, and he said, "What's this funny gong you got on your chest?" He said, "It's HC." So what's that for? He said, "For doing my job." That was typical Burkie. And lovely guy as well. Always, Burkie is honest as what the day is long. And Burkie is one of those guys who wears his heart on his sleeve. He doesn't cut corners. He doesn't talk nonsense. He'll tell you exactly how he feels. You know exactly where you stand with him. But that's the guy you want on your side. A friend for life, really. Eddie Streff, as I mentioned earlier, also excellent guy. He trained me up on the Wasp as a flight engineer. Absolute star. Sully's, Jans Marinsburg. Sully's and I never got on well initially, but we did eventually, and he went on to become a technical officer at 22 Squadron later on. Good guy as well. I'm talking engineer now. Owen Daniel, absolute star, young engineer, became a sergeant major in the Air Force, which is on pension now as well. Makes us feel very old, but anyway, one of those things. But Mark Reed, who I still chat to every now and then, lives in Swaziland. He's got an electrical lighting business in Swaziland, doing very well. Brett Warren, who, 5 of us got transferred from the squadron, all 5 of us resigned because we weren't prepared to leave Cape Town. For me, it was just financial suicide at the time. But Brett Warren was one of them. And he's doing very well. He's in Botswana. I think he's become a citizen there now. I know he's got a couple of aircraft. He's got an aircraft with some poster photo the other day. But talk about the engineers. Engineers are like a brotherhood. We've got a WhatsApp group with over 100 flight engineers, and the guys still communicate with each other. Sometimes the guy, you'll hear nothing for a couple of months, and then he'll post something, but we know he's there. And the nice thing about it is if something happens to someone else, the guy says, "Oh, so and so's in trouble," immediately it's like, "How can we help the guy? What can we do? Where is he? Where is he located? If I'm close by, I can see him." That type of thing, which is great. And and then the ground crew we had a couple of good guys. We had a guy called Fluffy Dempers who was the technical officer at one stage. He went to officer's course, obviously, was engineer as well. And his younger brother, Francois, was called Little Fluffy. They all went to Paul Gym. Now, I was at Paul Boys High from standard 6, 7, and 8. And so we're opposition. We're inter schools every year. Francois and I have a standing 100 Rand a year bet. I think even about 500 Rand at this stage if my team keeps losing. But when we win, I let him know that we won. But I never pay him when we lose. It's just a friendly banter thing that we have going. But it's just, I say to young guys I meet today, and I say to you, what was the Air Force like? And I say, it was my life. I loved it. My wife, we were both married before, and we were chatting one evening, and she said to me, "What decision have you made in your life that you regret the most?" Talking in general. And I said to her, the day I left the Air Force. The day I resigned was probably the worst mistake I made in my life. I've had some good jobs and good money since then. And I'm very happy with the way my life went in general. And I've got a fantastic wife. I'm really happy. But that, as far as my career is concerned, that was probably the biggest mistake I made. I should have maybe bit the bullet. And I said it was financial suicide at the time. But I should have maybe just ridden that wave until it became foam. And taken the posting, and I would have been well away today, better off financially for sure. But I think the experience and the camaraderie would have been so much better if I'd spent more time in the Air Force. And I only did 14 years, but I loved every minute of it. And I still miss it. I still miss the camaraderie. I try and go to every reunion I can because I miss the guys. I'm stuck a bit here in the winelands. We're about 120, 140 km away from Cape Town, but every opportunity I get, I go down there and so on. And then, you spoke about the moths. In 2006, a mate of mine invited me with him to go to a moth shallow meeting. Moth shallow was on the racetrack at Killarney. And I went along, and it was like a new door opening for me. All these guys, Army, Navy, Air Force, medics, Marines, all national service, all PF that weren't active anymore. And we all spoke the same language. And it was brilliant. And we were all striving for the same respect towards each other, which was fantastic. And so, then the MOS, you go to 3 meetings, and then you get inducted, and then you get this little badge, which is here on my lapel. That's my little tin hat. It's a miniature replica of the tin hat that the First World War Allied troops wore. And obviously the Second World War, I think, was very much the same. And so I became a moth. I've been a moth now for 16 years. Still enjoying it very much. The guys that have been moths for 30 years. The day they finished national service, I joined the moths. And I wish I'd known about it then, but obviously I didn't. But I love it. It's my passion. My wife gets a bit cheesed off every now and then because I've got to squeeze off time to be with her when I want to be at the mosque, but I've realized now that my priorities are with my wife and my home. So the mosque, we have 3 things. So first your family, then your work, and then the mosque. Sometimes the lines get a bit blurred, but we've got to sort it out in our household, which is quite nice. But it's my passion, and the mosque has been good for me, because I think it gives a lot of guys, when they finish national service, there's a lot of guys out there that were traumatized, got PTSD, and they don't know how to work through these things. And I promise you, you come to the mosque, you get through it, because someone there has experienced the same as you, and they can maybe make light of it, or you can discuss it with them, and you can get over it. And that's what the camaraderie is about. That true comradeship. We support each other, we help each other, and it's a fantastic organization. I love it to pieces. As you can hear, I'm very passionate about it. And I'll probably be a moth till the day I die. And we have another thing as well, that when you die, you can actually have a part of your memorial, your funeral service can be a moth service, where the moths actually take over the service for a little while, and the guys pay their final respects to you as an ex-moth or as an ex-soldier, which is quite nice. Um, I've done it for a couple of guys when I was old bull. I did it for a mate of mine's father, who was a moth pet Boyd. He was a Tommy Rendleshell, which is right opposite Easterport, where the two cannons are there on Kuba Road. He passed away and I did his funeral. Miles came back from New Zealand and actually asked me to do his dad's funeral, which was quite an honor. Very difficult thing to do, especially when you knew the guy personally. And I've known Uncle Pat from when I was a Epi. He was on Shackleton's all his life, and he was a good guy. He always treated me with respect. And his son came to Scotland as a radio mech or instrument radios, and we became mates. And used to go and have a braai with Uncle Pat. And I always, even in uniform, I called him Uncle Pat. I never called him Sergeant Major. He was just such that like with fatherly figure. Yeah, and it was difficult to do his funeral, but it was also a privilege. And yeah, I've lost some friends along the way. You know, to go back to the Air Force, it was often, you know, I don't know if you see on Facebook, there's a group, the border war, and then Grensoorlog. And every day they post the guys that passed away on that day in the past. And it still catches my attention, and sometimes, and I'm not being soppy, but sometimes bring a tear to the eye when I read about guys like Chris Peterson, who was on our course. He was a pilot on our course, we was an engineer's course, got wings together, and he died in 1982. So he'd only been qualified pilot for like less than a year when he went down. He was flying with I think it was John Robertson, not sure, John Twaddle, I don't know, one of the Johns. And Chris was the co-pilot, Chris Peterson, and the engineer was Grobbies, and they went down with the 15 parabats in the back, went out. And then a little while after that, a guy with a 22 squadron with me, he was an engineer when I was ground crew. He was one of the guys also inspired me to become an engineer, was a guy called Kenny Dalglish. He actually got washed off course and he went back and he finished the course, and he was determined to become an engineer, and he had guts. And Kenny was a good guy, was a very, very nice person. And he got shot down with, I think it was one of the other Johns. John Robertson was on 12, and General Earp's son Mike, and Kenny was a flight engineer, and yeah, they got toasted as well. Yeah, and then like guys like Danny that got killed up there, and I forget the names, but the guys that were close to me, I remember them, and I read these things and I think, oh, what would they be doing now? You know, Kenny never saw his son grow up. His son was, Donovan was a little toddler when he died. That's sad, you know. And you look at all the other guys. I mean, we were minimal amount of Air Force guys, I think, that got killed compared to the Army guys with ground jobs. But it's still sad that we had to lose people for something. When you think back today, actually didn't make a difference. People say it made a difference. I personally don't think it did. My personal opinion. I think it was a futile effort, and I think it was a bit of brainwashing from our government at the time. But we did it because we believed, and we were young, and we were bulletproof. And we did it because we loved it. We loved our country, and we still do. And no, we're not going to go into politics, but unfortunately, well, it was fallen by the wayside. Now it feels like we did it for nothing, but I believe it was a good cause at the time.
Manie, yes, most definitely it was a good cause. The more I have been associated with Legacy Conversations, the more I realize two things that you touched on. Yeah, there's a big school of thought that what we did, what our generation did, not what we did, what our generation did up there, made it possible for our kids and even our grandkids to live in better conditions, because we stopped the trauma for 20 to 30 years more. So what's happening now, sort of, you know, I don't want to go there. The other thing that you touched on strongly, and I want to bring in one or two, I want to share one of the memories that you shared with me and ask you if you still got video of that. But before we get there, I know Koos often says, go towards the end of a chat, he will say, don't sit in your dark room on your own. Go to the moths. He often says it. And he was a policeman. And he often says, go to the moths. Go and find. Don't let Satan find you in a dark corner. Go talk. Go talk, people. And you've just said it there. And you said how therapeutic it is. I find this is my moth shell experience. I find talking to you guys therapeutic for myself. Where I suppressed a lot of feelings for a long, long time. You know some of those feelings. I went through a messy, ugly, dirty divorce, and you were there to help me. Those years ago. That's why I refer to you as my psychologist. You sorted me out. But one of the key things that Manie mentioned, and this will stay with me forever. I'm going to name Millie's name here. Millie Scutter.
Yes, yes.
Manie and a few of the mates, and please send me that bit of a clip so I can include it here, please, Manie. Went down to Mossel Bay in that direction to go and sing. Millie Skitter's wife requested that they do this. And they went and sang, "We choppers, we choppers." And it moving. I've seriously got goose flesh as I speak about it.
Until I asked us that it was, or told me that it was Louis' wish, being ex-Air Force guys, if you sing a song, specific song, here today. So it's a little bit difficult to sing while you're choking, but we're going to try.
Oh, choppers, we'll fly the skies together. Oh, choppers, in any kind of weather. When your flying days are over and your blades are folded over, good old chopper, friend of mine. Keep your heads up, fellow, the moon is yellow tonight. Keep your heads up, fellow, the moon is yellow tonight. When your flying days are over and your blades are folded over, good old chopper, friend of mine.
Dankie julle.
But that's what happens. Camaraderie.
Yeah, it was great. Millie, he got brain cancer, and I spoke to him about a week or two before he passed away. And Owen Daniel was still in close contact with him as well. But I phoned him, I said, listen, how are you doing? And he said, I'm having good days and bad days. He said, but you know what, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to stick around for a while. So he said, but if you lived in George, if you ever come past George, there's always a bottle of brandy and a fire when you get here. Don't worry, anytime. You're my brother. And that's what it was like with the engineers. And excuse me, in the RV, Owen was there, I was there, Franz Lagoni, and there was another guy. His name escapes me now. He was a deck engineer, right engineer. But we sang a chopper song for them. You know, that we're choppers, we're a long way from home. That one was brilliant. And there were a lot of. He worked for Starlight. There were quite a lot of Starlight staff there as well. And yeah, it was amazing. It was a good experience. To a good send off for the guy because he was very well liked. And he was a funny guy. He was a jester, but he was always respectful. I'm going to tell a little story about Millie. Millie left the Air Force after I did. He went on to Pumas, I think. I think it might have been Oryx, I'm not sure. But they were doing firefighting. It was over Christmas and New Year, and Cape Town was ablaze, like mostly it's every blooming year. And I don't want to blame the Wali's or anyone else, but it's like silly season for fires. You know, guys have a braai, they don't kill the fire properly, or guys flick a cigarette butt out of the car, and that type of thing. And all fires just leap from one valley to the other. And we did it quite a few times, but anyway, they were fighting fires a lot. And Millie was so tired. He landed on the Friday morning, and he walked in. Salis was the technical officer, and he walked into his office and said, with the major, then he said, Major, can I put in for some leave, please? He said, when do you want leave for? He said, for this weekend, please. I want Saturday and Sunday. He said, but it's weekend. You don't put in leave for a weekend. He said, but I've been working every weekend for the last 4 weeks. I want to see my wife and sleep. He said, I just want to go home and sleep next to my wife and wake up next to her and go to sleep next to her, not come home late and leave early in the morning. So he says, do I have to leave for me? He says, go home. I want to see you on Wednesday. They gave him 4 days off. That was what it was like. Sally says, the engineer, he appreciated what I was going through. But that was Millie. He was a good guy. You might remember Jackson Wilbur also as well. Jackson had one leg shorter than the other. Funny guy. Also fought to get onto engineer's course. Yeah, he fought to get on engineer's course, became a bit of quite a good engineer. Funny guy. Comedy character. But he fought to get on engineer's course and he did quite well. I'm trying to think of guys that you would know that I've bumped into in the last while. Frans Lagoni is doing very, very well. Also left the Air Forces. He's living down in Hermanus. Owen's on pension now. He lives in Cape Town, doing very well.
Manie, I think you guys have got power outage shortly, so I think we're going to have to wind this one up. Or wrap it up, not wind it up. Wind it. Oh, yeah. Well, my moormeter is getting wound up, you know. But I have to say thank you. And I have to say, guys, Air Force guys, engineers, pilots, Manie set an example here for you guys. Come and talk. Share the memories. That's what it's about. It's a conversation, and it's to capture the legacy. Not necessarily, as Manie said, they're not our personal legacies, but the history. Manie mentioned heroes there. We worked with heroes. We served heroes. Manie mentioned names of folk. 16 Squadron seemed to be particularly rough on engineers. Danny Land was one of them. He was at 16 Squadron. I was quite a junior engineer when he passed away. And so along the lines there, we often wonder. But as I've said too here at Legacy Conversations, this is therapeutic for us. Come and tell your stories. You mentioned Kali. Kali was a good mate of mine. Actually, his birthday is coming up in a couple of days' time. I'd love to drag Kali into this. I have another one of your mutual buddies, our mutual buddies, that may come and speak with us. He's been on the channel before, early days, Gino van der Merwe. There's one or two guys that are putting their hand up to say yes. But for now, Manie, really, I do appreciate this. It's fantastic. And I do invite you to come back for another one. You can tell us some of your naughty stories, your naughty days. There's a few stories, as you say, you're jotting them down there. Do jot them down. But for now, before the power goes there by you, you've got things to do. I do say, as we always say at Legacy Conversations, until we chat again, God bless.
Thank you, Pussy. God bless you too. Ciao.